Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Yes. So first and foremost, I want to thank you because for many of us, it would be our day off. Yes, that is well deserved. So I want to thank you for being present here today. But let me just kind of dive in. As stated, I'm Nadia Lopez. I am the founding principal of Mott Hall Bridges Academy in Brownsville, Brooklyn. I want to give you some statistics. We're data driven, so it could bring some context. So Mott Hall Bridges consist of 31% of children with special needs. 10% of the children that I receive are proficient. So that means every year I only get 7 kids per grade level that can read and write and do math on a grade level. So that's levels 3s and 4s. 80% or more receive free or reduced lunch. When we talk about the demographics, 85% are African American, 14% are of Hispanic descent, and 1% are others. Brownsville has the highest rate of HIV and AIDS in all of Brooklyn, and that's ages 11 to 21. It is also the highest rate of hypertension, the highest rate of cholesterol, the highest rate of cancer compared to all of New York City. 32% of the residents have a high school diploma. 14% are college graduates in terms of having a bachelor's, and only 3% have a master's degree. The average income mean in Brownsville in the housing developments, which are the projects, is only $11,000. On the outskirts, the residence is only $28,000. So after you hear all of these statistics, you think to yourself, who wants to open a school in this community, right? It's not something that you would just say, yeah, just give me a building, I'm gonna take over the world. But at the end of the day, my belief is I opened a school to close a prison. And the reason why I say that is because $80 billion is spent on incarcerating 2.3 million individuals. In New York State alone, 80% of the people who are in prison come from areas like Brownsville, East New York, Bed-Stuy, South Bronx, as well as Far Rockaway. So when you think of the statistics, and you think about the fact that Brownsville is in one of the richest cities in all of the world, I cannot sit back and allow children to know that they are not valuable. So I was inspired. I came into education as a career changer. I went to Wagner College and I graduated with a degree in nursing. However, that was not my calling. It was my mother's calling for me, but it was not my calling. And so for many of us, we do follow what our parents say, but however, I decided that my degree was going to be befitting for her to put it on her wall as opposed to me doing something that I felt like I might kill someone, and that would not be in anyone's best interest. I decided to work at Verizon, the phone company. I know it doesn't sound like it has any connection, but I'm going to explain to you why. I wanted to figure myself out. I wanted to do it in a way where I wasn't harming someone, but I was also going to learn the lessons of what it is I wanted to achieve in terms of my purpose. So I decided to become an account collections representative. Don't judge me, it paid very well and I had excellent benefits. So I was sitting in an office and I hated my job. I hated the fact that people were calling me angry and talking to me in a demeaning manner because they couldn't pay for their phone bills, and that we had cut off their accounts. But I understood that when people are angry, they're not angry at you, they're angry at their circumstances. So one day I was a new mom. I had just returned back to work because at Verizon you could take a year off, which was great and excellent. And I thought to myself, I'm gonna have to figure out where my daughter's gonna go to school, and I'm gonna have to figure out who's gonna be in the classroom, who's going to inspire and tell her that she is going to be dynamic. And I remembered every teacher that I ever had when I got to public school. So for me, it was Miss Paoni, who was my 2nd grade teacher, Miss Burns, who was my 3rd grade teacher, my 5th grade teacher was Miss Sykes, and my 6th grade teacher was Miss O'Leary. I didn't talk about my 4th grade teacher, and I won't mention her name because she was not my favorite teacher. I remember that I failed a test one time. It was on pulleys, and I love science. But she never really covered police. And she decided to give us a test. And when I went home, I told my mother that I had gotten a 30 on the test, and she couldn't understand why. And my mother is a nurse's assistant, and she never takes off of work. She took off of work that day to speak to Mr. Tucker, who was the principal, because she wanted to understand why did her daughter fail this particular test. And according to Ms. Veroni, she said, well, I gave them the test because I just want them to know, I want to test them to see what they know. And she says, well, she failed. So clearly you didn't teach her something, but at the end of the day, what are we going to do to make sure that she doesn't feel like a failure? You need to teach her again and then give the test again. And all of us in the class who did fail, we ended up getting 80s and 90s. And it was just a true testament of how there are some teachers who were called to do this and some teachers who were not, right? So I wanted to make sure that my daughter was faced with the teachers that she could call off, that she would remember and she would love. And I thought to myself, I can make a difference by being an educator. So I went through the New York City Teaching Fellows. I went to Long Island University. I became a special education teacher, and the reason why I love special ed is because as a nurse, you learn to be holistic. You learn not to look at the diagnosis, but you look at the whole child. You look at the whole person. You want to know what's at the core of the problem. You want to know about the behaviors. You want to know what was the predispositions that caused this child to be here, and how can we support the family. So I loved it. And I was at one of the most challenging schools in New York City in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. And those children, as we would say, were off the hook. They came to school with no discipline. They could be disrespectful. They could curse people out. But in my classroom, they were expected to come ready and able to learn and be respectful of every adult. And those children taught me the word love, being there unconditionally, and just listening. It was a time when I was going through a divorce with my then husband. I was becoming a single mom. I was getting my master's. But yet those children came to school every single day, just wanting someone to be there for them. And I thought to myself, how angry can I be at someone who doesn't want to be in my life when these children are willing to show up every day? But I also recognized that there were adults in that building who could care less if they came, who could care less if they learned, and would tell them that every single day, so they started to internalize it. And that's why they were acting the way they did. So after 3 years of being in that building, I began to say to myself, it comes down to leadership. It comes down to how you honor the educators in your space. It comes down to building their capacity. It comes down to asking me, what do I need help with? And actually modeling for me the expectations, as opposed to speaking to me about what they want done and not actually giving me the resources that I need. So because I wasn't getting it, I wasn't one who sat and complained. I thought about, I need to go to a new space and learn what it's like to be in a new community with educators who love what they do and are willing to empower each other. And so I opened up the Urban Assembly Institute for Young Women in Math and Science, and I was the founding teacher there, and that was an amazing experience. To empower young women of color, to let them know that they can be exceptional and dynamic, to teach them about STEAM, because we are so marginalized in those specific disciplines. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, yet it's only 13% comprised of people of color. I had a problem with that. But I also realized that I needed a balance between boys and girls. A lot of girls have a lot of estrogen. And so I thought to myself, knowing that I was in a failed relationship, knowing that I have a daughter, she's going to one day meet a young man. And if he doesn't receive the same support, if he's not told that he's exceptional, if he's not reminded that he is a descendant of kings, he's never going to be better than her father. And that happens in our education system. And let me be clear, we take a lot on as educators. We are no longer just instructional pedagogues who sit in classrooms. We have become the minister. We have become the mental health provider. We have become so much to so many, and not just the kids, but the overbearing parents or the parents who don't show up. And we all know that. Can we agree to that? Yes. Right? So I needed to make sure that I was going to do the same for girls as I did for boys. And so that's why I decided to write a proposal when I went to New Leaders and I became an administrator, and I wanted to do a STEAM-focused school because our children are invisible and they're not listened to. Our children don't know that they're exceptional. And when you're in a community like Brownsville, where I just reminded you through the statistics, it's considered poor. It's considered in a community where children don't have opportunities. So all of my 7th graders have to take an entrepreneurship course for the entire year. And the reason why I do that is because if you're telling me they don't have money, we need to teach them how to make money. And we need to teach them how to save money. If we talk about the fact that there's a community that is part of a food desert, then we need to teach them about urban farming, which is why we have a community garden. And if we're going to teach children that they are descendants of greatness, then let's teach them why they are. Let's have them read the book by Rebecca Skloot, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. Let's have them become global citizens and read I Am Malala. Let's have them travel. They don't have to do it specifically through actual trains and planes. There's something called Skype. There's something called pen pals. We used to have that. How many people had pen pals when they were younger, right? I know I don't want to waste anyone's time because I don't want to speak at you because you get spoken to a lot or you're in the classrooms and having to speak to a lot of people. I want you to remain inspired. And the reason why I say that is because all of us are in here because there was an educator who influenced us and touched our lives. I want you to be reminded when you get back to work tomorrow and you're looking at your clothes tonight and you're thinking about, oh God, I gotta go back to that building. There's that one child who is looking forward to you coming in. There is that one child who melts your heart, or that one child who's the thorn in your side. They need you. Don't worry about those parents who don't show up. When I was a kid, they didn't show up either. That hasn't changed. Good teaching is good teaching, and despite the policies, despite all the changes, if you have been in the Department of Education or any schools in 10 years, you know policies change. If there's one thing we know, things are going to change. But good teaching, great teaching, you show up and you do what's in the best interest of these children. That's your obligation and your responsibility. Because tomorrow's future is in our classrooms. And we have no one else to blame but ourselves if we fail to do our job and we only show up for a check. Can we all agree to that? Say yes? Yes. So I'm done. Thank you so much. My book is A Bridge to Brilliance, and you can follow me on the local